After the loss to Miami, there's a lot that needs to be fixed before SEC play begins. The biggest of those things, I think, has to be the pass rush.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On Aggies. I'm your host, Andrew Stefaniak. Thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every single day. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more right now. With new customers can bet $5 and get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Yesterday was painful. Yesterday's game was painful. There's a lot that needs to be corrected. But before we get into what needs to be fixed and all that stuff, I do want to say, we got to stay behind this team. I think fans are quick to, can be quick to, want to not be behind a team after a loss like that. But we got to stay behind these young men. That's what they were saying in the post game press conferences. It was like, everybody stay behind us. We didn't play our game today. And we're going to be all right. Just trust in that. And, that's what the players were adamant about. And I trust them. So, we got to stay behind them. I know it hurts. It hurts me. It hurts all of us. But we got to stay behind the players. But I think the first thing that you have to dive into when you talk about what went wrong yesterday was the pass rush. I mean, now, how much of it is on Coach Durkin? How much of it is on these young men? I think it's a healthy balance. One thing I will tell you is I looked back at all of the big plays that Miami had, all of the big passing plays, especially the touchdown when A&M was up 17-7 and Miami scored through Tyler Van Dyke threw a bomb for a touchdown and they scored. Looking back at that one, we're going to run through some simple math, and this is sarcastic math. There's 5 offensive linemen, okay? If you're only rushing 4 constantly, now, I know it wasn't third down and long. If you're only rushing 4 constantly against one of the better offensive lines in college football that Miami has, you are not going to get a pass rush. You are not going to have any kind. I mean, that throw, y'all need to go back and watch that one again if you haven't seen it. Van Dyke truly had a month. I mean, he was able to sip some Diet Coke and, read the play and then find his receiver. And, we're going to talk about the corners. We're going to talk about the defensive backs in segment 2, so I don't want to get crazy into that. But, I mean, it's hard to cover players for a long time. We talked about this heading into the season. Pass rush makes it easier on your secondary. Pass rush is what leads to bad decisions from the quarterback. So, Tyler Van Dyke, you didn't make him make any bad decisions. I mean, he picked the Aggies apart. He looked really good. I owe that young man an apology. I was wrong about him. I was not a believer in Tyler Van Dyke, and he showed me. I mean, he showed I was wrong. So, I'll own that. But, I mean, you have to get a pass rush. And I think, and this is where it gets frustrating for Texas A&M fans. Is we talk about all the time the talent on this defensive line. And then that's when, like I said, the question comes into play. Is that talent not being developed correctly? Is it just a matter of the coaching staff isn't putting this defensive line in a position to succeed? I think it's a mix of a lot of things. I mean, there's a lot to unpack from this game. But I think that you need to send some more blitzes. I mean, well, this is what frustrates me. And listen, we can sit here, us fans, and we can criticize Coach Durkin all we want, and that's fair. And I think he deserves it a little bit. But at the end of the day, I mean, Coach Durkin knows what he's doing more than, any of us. And I just think, I mean, it may not look like it sometimes, but I do. I'm a believer in trusting your coaches, but it's hard when you're not sending a whole bunch of guys. I mean, like I said, we're going to run through our sarcastic math one more time. There's 5 offensive linemen. If you're sending 4 players every single play, you can even have one double team in there for the offensive line. I mean, it makes the offensive linemen's life a lot easier when you're only sending 4. And then you might say, well, we'll send 4, but we'll run a little stunt. We'll run a little action, and we'll flip this guy around here, and we'll make it seem like he's going there, but he's really going to come here, and that guy's going to come here. I mean, what I saw, it was just like, okay, they're going to snap the ball, and the defensive lineman are going to run straight at the offensive lineman in front of them. I mean, I rewatched a little bit of the film, but it's just like, I don't get the plan for the defensive line, and that is why it's so frustrating. That's what makes this frustrating, is the fact of the talent you have there. I mean, the talent on the Texas A&M defensive line, and this is where I thought going into a game like this, all I can sit here and talk about it is what I've seen, the development we've heard. All we've heard is how much these second-year players have developed, how this 2022 class is ready to explode. I think you saw that from some of our MVPs of the game, which we'll get into in segment 3. But I just think that I wanted to see more from this defensive line, and I didn't see that. That frustrated me. Now, I want to pull this up to make sure I'm right about this. I didn't write it down, but I was impressed with the Aggies' ability to stop the run. I'm pretty sure. Let me double check before I say this. I want to make sure I'm right. Yeah, 3.2 yards a carry. 3.2 yards a carry. That is awesome. Heading into this game, I'll tell you this right now. If I closed my eyes and one of y'all came up to me and said, Andrew, we're gonna Miami's gonna average 3.2 yards a carry on Saturday, I think that the Aggies win that game by 1,000,000 points. Because I thought that where where Miami was going to dominate the Aggies, if they were going to, was going to be running the football. And it ended up being more through the air. I mean, Van Dyke was 21 of 30, 374 yards, 5 touchdowns. I mean, he was solid. Some of those deep balls, he threw a good. You have to eventually, you got to get some pressure on him. I mean, I know you had a couple sacks, but it seems like, a couple sacks will take that. But at the end of the day, I feel like there's a lot more hurries and pressures and all that, in a stat sheet that matter. And I know there was a few here and there, but it's like, you got to get more pressure on a quarterback. Quarterbacks, I think people don't give quarterbacks the credit they deserve sometimes. Quarterbacks, I mean, if you're playing a quarterback in the ACC, SEC Power 5, you can, if you have time, you're gonna be able to find an open receiver and put the ball on the money, 46 times out of 50. And that's what Van Dyke did. He had time. He took advantage of it. He found the open guy. So I think that's my first concern is the pressure. But like I said, I do think it's a mix of play calling, and I mean, like, you can't put it all on Coach Durkin. You can't put it all on this defensive line. I think it's a healthy mix. But something's got to change. I mean, you have too much talent back there to not be getting consistent pressure on the opposing quarterback. Now, you have a get-right game against Louisiana Monroe coming up before Auburn comes to town. You have to get right. You have to use this get-right game. I mean, listen, what did LSU do last year? LSU, they don't do what they lose to a ACC non-conference team, and then they go on to win the West. I'm not predicting that. I don't want people, I'm not predicting that. What I am saying is, what I am telling you is this: you can come back from this. The season is not over. The season is not over. There's 10 more games to play, a whole bunch of SEC games. You still get Bama at home. You still get a whole bunch of opportunities at LSU on the road, at Tennessee on the road. You have a whole bunch of opportunities to show, what this Texas A&M football team's about. And I think that a lot of these issues are fixable, but it's frustrating that we continue to say that. I mean, I said that after New Mexico. We have a lot of issues, but they're fixable. At some point, things need to just be fixed. They need to not be fixable. They need to be fixed. And then the other thing I'll talk about is the tackling. I mean, on PFF, there were 6 players graded less than a 40 for tackling. This is Division I football. This is SEC football. You have to wrap up. You have to wrap up and make tackles. That's, they teach you that day one. So that's a little frustrating to see. The lack of tackling, it frustrates me. When you're there for the play, you make the play, you just got to finish it, and you don't finish it. That's frustrating. I don't have the numbers on tackles broken, yards after contact, stuff like that. I'd be really curious. But I just think that you have to wrap people up. I was really that was another thing that really was disencouraging, was the amount of broken tackles Miami had and just the poor tackling the Aggies displayed. I mean, like I said, you got to be able to tackle. You have to be able to tackle. This is big boy football. You got to be able to tackle, and that frustrates the heck out of me. Now at the end of the day, like I said, not to knock these young men. I get it. It was a tough game. But I think that there's a lot on the defensive side of things that needs to be fixed. I was, and we'll talk a little bit about the offense. I was I was impressed with the offense a little bit. I mean, I know it was not perfect. A lot went wrong. You got a fumble that kills you, a pick that kills you, even though it wasn't really on Wigman. I mean, there's a lot that needs to be fixed on offense. But I do think the offense played well enough to win the game if the defense helped them out a little bit. So, I mean, I think those are the two things. You got to get pressure on the quarterback. If you don't, they're going to pick you apart, just like Tyler Van Dyke did, and you have to wrap up and tackle better. If you can fix those two things and do better at those two things, I think you really can turn this season around and be okay. But if you can't do those two things, SEC play is going to be extremely painful. We're going to talk about the cornerback room and some players that we didn't see that I'm kind of wondering why we didn't, coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at Athletic Brewing Company. Athletic Brewing Company has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good. Their brews are great tasting and award-winning and beat out full-strength beers in global competitions. Athletic Brewing Company sent a six-pack to me. It was great stuff. I was really anxious to try it and give it a shot. It was really good. I was really impressed, and it was good stuff. I'm going to have to order some more. I really recommend going to check it out. Really good stuff over at Athletic Brewing Company. You can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you or buy online at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers can use code LOCKEDON to get 15% off your first order. That's code LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer. Exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. I think the corners and the issues in the secondary and the issues on the defensive line not getting pressure kind of go hand in hand, like I discussed a minute ago. But the corners got cooked. I mean, for lack of better terms. I mean, looking at PFF grades, Tariq Chappelle didn't grade out well. You didn't see Josh DeBerry didn't grade out well. Jayvon Thomas didn't grade out well. And I saw this floating all over Aggie Twitter. And now I think it is time to ask the question, where was Tony Grimes? Where was Sam McCall? I looked up. I was like, I wanted to make sure, because we saw Le'Veon Moss. It was funny. The whole game, I'm sitting here going, where's Le'Veon Moss? He got injured at the end of the week of practice and gave it a go before the game. Wasn't able to go. So we got clarity for that. But it's like with McCall and Tony Grimes, correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't seen any kind of injury report from those two. I haven't seen anything. And it's a little bit concerning. Like, are they just not as good as we anticipated? I mean, because here's the deal. Jayvon Thomas, young man, not his best game. Not his best game, but I'll tell you, it's all good. It's all going to be okay. True freshman. It's going to be completely fine. He has an extremely talented player, a lot of positives ahead of him in his football career at Texas A&M and potentially on after that. But he struggled yesterday. He got burned a few times. And I'll tell you, like I said, some of it isn't, always on the corners. The defensive line needs to get pressure. It has to be hand in hand. But, at the end of the day, you can't make that excuse and say, well, they didn't get any pressure. You still have to hold your own. You still have to be able to, lock down receivers. And the corners didn't do that. I'll tell you one thing. I'm going to go ahead and sneak peek one of our MVPs of the day, but Taurean York, the linebacker, I was impressed with that young man. And I think it's funny because, maybe this is controversial. Y'all tell me if you think it is, but I think going into the season, I talked about this so much, my biggest concern was the linebackers. And I think after what we saw yesterday with the way York played, I think that I wasn't as concerned about them as I was some other positions. So I just think that's a little, funny in a painful way that York was impressive. There's a really bright future ahead of that young man. Sorry to spoil one of our MVPs, but I had to talk about him. But, So I think I don't. Here's the deal. This is the end of conversation on Tony Grimes. I mean, for it, it's like here on him. He is a good football player. I know at North Carolina, he might not have had the career many anticipated, being a 5-star recruit, but he comes over to Texas A&M as a player that I've seen high on draft boards, NFL draft boards. I saw on some preseason all SEC lists. I've seen so much from Tony Grimes, so many positives that I really thought you were going to see a good year out of him. And the fact that he can't even crack the rotation in the game where your corners are for lack of better words, getting cooked. I don't understand that. I don't understand why he's not in the ball game. I think that I don't get it. I don't know the analysis there. It's like, why are you not giving him a shot? Jayvon Thomas, like I said, I'm not trying to bash this young man. He's going to be fine. He's going to be okay. He's a great player and he's going to figure it out, but he did not have his best game yesterday. I don't think Tariq had his best game. I don't think the secondary as a whole had their best game. And this was a unit that I thought this Texas A&M secondary was going to be dominant. I thought it was going to be a really good unit for this football team and it was going to help them win a lot of games. So I just want to see this secondary and these corners, be better and maybe give some other guys some shots. I mean, Sam McCall and Tony Grimes were highly recruited, good football players. They are good football players, and I get it. You can do the whole argument. Well, stars don't mean everything, which is true. I think we learned that some, yesterday, but what I'll tell you though, is my thoughts on this is, I mean, Sam McCall and Tony Grimes, I've seen the tape on them at their previous schools. I've seen them play football. I know they're good football players. I believe that I don't believe I know that Jayvon Thomas and Josh DeBerry and Tariq Chappelle are also good players. But at the end of the day, it's like you gotta get these guys in there. You gotta give these guys a shot. So I was definitely a little, for lack of better words, I was a little saddened by the play of the secondary. Now, I know that if the defensive line was able to get a better pass rush, we might have seen some, it might have been a little bit easier on the secondary, but at the end of the day, you still have to do your job. And I think these guys struggled, and it's things I'm hoping that they're going to be able to figure out and fix before SEC play begins. Like I said, you do have a get-right game against Louisiana Monroe before the Auburn Tigers come to town. So, this is an opportunity to get better this week. You need to get better. You need to go play football, a good football game against Louisiana Monroe. You need to fix some of these mistakes. You need to go out there angry. You just need to go hit people hard, practice the right way, play the right way, and then beat Auburn when they come to town. But like I said, ladies and gentlemen, there really is a lot that does need to be fixed before there's a lot that needs to be fixed if the Aggies want to go on to have a successful season. And then the last thing I want to discuss before we get into MVPs of the game and run through some stats and some different stuff like that is 13 snaps for Moose Muhammad. So here's the deal. You have 4 wide receivers that have to be on the field, and that creates an issue. You got Anais, you got Evan, you got Noah, and then you have Moose. You have 4 players that have to be on the field. I thought we would see more of a split, to where if you run, 80 offensive snaps, I think the Aggies ran about 90. I'll have to double check that. But let's say you run, I was expecting 75 from Evan, and then 65 from, 40 and 40 from Anais and Moose, and then 70 from Noah, or some mix like that. It doesn't have to be exactly like that, but I was expecting to see that from the wide receiver room. I was expecting to see all 4 of those guys have a big role for this Texas A&M offense. And seeing that Moose, especially knowing that Noah, left the game, was a little banged up at one point. He was able to return, but knowing that he was banged up and you still only played 13 snaps, I mean, I just don't. What does that mean? What does that mean for Moose? I mean, this is another thing. I mean, it's like you can't, what Moose is. The type of player he is. He is a dang good wide receiver. So it's like, if he's not getting on the field, what's going on? I just, that really does make me wonder So, I mean, like, is he okay? Is he not 100%? I don't want to speculate on anything, but like, why is he only getting 13 snaps? I was not expecting that. I was still expecting him to get 40 snaps a game, even if he wasn't like listed as a starter. Same would have been for Anias if Moose won the job. I mean, I would have expected these guys to pretty much be a 50-50 split. So, I mean, because they're both good football players, I think they both need to be on the field. So this was definitely a little bit surprising to me. And like I said, I don't know if there's any clarification on that, but I'd be curious to see like what's going on there. We're going to talk about the MVPs of the game and run through some stats coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can bet on everything from spreads to player props and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. MVPs of the game, I think we're going to do 3 every week. And for me, it was Taurean York, Evan Stewart, and Conner Weigman. Did Taurean York play a perfect game? No. Obviously there was things to be better. He did grade out well on PFF, but at the end of the day, the positives I see from his game is that he's a good young football player that I don't really know. I don't think we were really expecting to see, that play out this year. So, York had a good game. He's still got stuff to work on, stuff to get better at. Always can say that about everything we do in life, but I mean, I'm just excited is the word I would use to say I'm excited that York is, I'm excited that he is playing good football, and I think he's going to be a good player for this Texas A&M defense for many, many years, which is a good thing because we talked about linebacker being a question of like depth and how good are you, how deep are you, and I think knowing that York's a solid football player really does make me feel better about that unit going forward the rest of this season. Conner Weigman and Evan Stewart, I know Conner Weigman. I mean, I think he's got that dog mentality. He's got that dog mentality. I really respect Conner Weigman. He fights hard. You can see it on his face. I mean, he's a fighter. He's out there. He hates losing more than he likes winning, and that's a mentality I like to see in my quarterback. You can just tell it by the way he conducts himself. He of course did end up making his first mistake of his college career, which it was funny. Ended up the one pick wasn't really his fault. The receiver fell down, which you hate that. That was a real momentum shifter. But I was still impressed with Wigman. He made some great throws. He looked good early. He did a good job making a drive to help the team late. And I thought that they were going to have a chance to maybe come back late. So I was impressed with Wigman. I really was. I think that, like, did he play perfect? No. Was there things that could be better? Yes. Did he miss some throws? Of course. But I think he showed his ability to use his legs. He showed his ability to throw the ball through the air. And the Aggies have a really good quarterback in Conner Weigman. And I feel good sleeping at night knowing that he's going to be around for a while, at least the rest of this year, next year, unless he leaves for the NFL, So after next year. So the Aggies have a good quarterback, and I think that games like this are gonna go your way sometimes if you are gonna go your way when you have 15 throwing the ball. And Conner Weigman is a dang good football player and a dang good quarterback, and he's gonna help Texas A&M win a lot of football games during his career. Evan Stewart, I don't know what else to say about him. He's just a really stinking good player. I mean, Evan Stewart is really good. I think the quest to 1,000 for him is severely in play. I mean, let's see, what's he at for the year? 19 catches for 257 yards. He had 11 for 142 in this game, which was exciting to see. Evan Stewart, he's one of the best wide receivers in the SEC. And while this might have been a painful loss, it was a great game from Evan Stewart. He's a good player. I mean, I still think you're going to see him drafted in the first round of the NFL draft coming up here soon. When he's same time as Wigman after next year. So those are the MVPs of the game. I was really impressed with those 3 players, and I think that they're going to lead to wins for Texas A&M for the going forward for this year, next year. So a lot of talented players and a lot of players with fight. And I like to see that on this roster. Looking at the few stats, Amari Daniels was 18 for 62 on the ground and a touchdown. That one fumble kills you. Didn't love that. Conner Weigman was 5 for 29 and a rushing touchdown on the ground. And then Reuben Owens was 5 for 7 on the ground. He got involved in the receiving game. Reuben Owens did. He had 3 receptions for 35 yards. That was great to see. And I think Amari Daniels had 4 receptions for 20 yards. Seeing that these running backs were able to catch the ball out of the backfield is a good thing. There were a lot of great plays Coach Petrino called to get the ball into the into the running backs' hands through the air that led to positive plays, led to first downs. A lot of big pickups came on plays like that, so that was great to see. Moose, the one catch for 15 yards. Oh, and then Ernest Kronover, the great that throw. That was, I think, Conner Weigman's best throw of the day. That was a great play call. That was an all-around great play for the 19-yard score. Good for him to get in the end zone. That was good to see. And then York led the team in tackles with 6. Led the team in tackles. You had 2 sacks. Both of the Shamars had one. Somebody predicted that's funny, but there was a prediction for one of the Shamars to have a whole bunch of sacks, which is funny. But and I don't remember which one they predicted, which is why I'm laughing. I'm like, which Shamar did they predict? But this defense has a lot to improve on. This offense has a lot to improve on. It's a painful loss for the Aggies. It really is. All of us fans know that, but there's stuff to build off of, and you got to remember this season is not over. You still got SEC play. You're 0-0 in SEC play. Let's stay behind these young men. Let's stay behind them. Cheer them on this week to practice against Louisiana Monroe, and then get ready to rock and roll for SEC play. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Hope everybody enjoyed Sunday, a little NFL football. Hope everybody has a great rest of your day today, and we will see you next time.